feeling honored, grateful, and I'm going through a process of death and rebirth. So there are many different energies inside of me these days. And yeah, just witnessing the process, surrendering to it. So I'm surrendering to the unfolding of what's coming. Before I start this session, I would love to ask here who has heard about the weave or read the weave, and you can either raise your hand or express yourself in the chat box. Great. Wonderful. And I'd love to also ask if anyone already has any specific questions that they absolutely like to ask before the end of this session. And if you do, please go ahead and raise your hand by using the hand tool. And so that I know that I need to be concise, I'm going to try to be as concise as I can. I tend to be analytical. And because we don't have too much time, I want to honor the needs of those who have questions. So at any given point, just raise your hand and I'm going to know that you have a question. Right. So I'd like to start this session with a question, two questions actually. What is regeneration to you? In one word, or it can be a sentence and you can add it to the chat box. What is regeneration? Supportive life cycles. Death and rebirth, I agree. More in than taken out. Yes, yes. It's interesting. This question is interesting to me because when we think of regeneration, we can think of regeneration from many different perspectives at different scales. And it was my personal journey through trauma, darkness, light, and also in entering the regenerative movement and experiencing so many different aspects of it, that I came to a conclusion that I want to share here, which is one of the main foundations for what the weave came to be. And I love how Joe Brewer defines regeneration. He says that regeneration is what all living organisms do as they create the conditions conducive to life. And he says that sustainability is, as a result, an outcome of regeneration. So I feel like this is an exceptional definition for regeneration, but I feel like we need to go a bit further when exploring what regeneration is, and that could be done through another question that I'd like to ask here, remembering who we truly are. I love that, Phoenix. Where does the regenerative movement start? That's another question I'd like to ask. Where does the regenerative movement start? In me, within. Here, from generative, yes, in awareness. Why am I asking this question? It was this question that guided largely the vision that is behind the weave. And through my personal experiences and observing, and my experience in education as well, and observing the soil of regeneration, and when I'm using this term metaphorically here, that I understood that there's a place where it needs to start in order for us to explore the top layers of that soil in a way that's actually serving the movement. Because these top layers are, in my understanding, tools that we need an intrinsic motivation in order to want to use these tools. In this exploration, I came to the conclusion that the regenerative movement starts on the level of the individual. And that was the foundation for the premise that guides the journey that the weave wants to invite its readers to embark on, which is the journey from human regeneration to planetary regeneration. So in my understanding, human regeneration is a prerequisite for planetary regeneration. And how does that start? I feel like that has a lot to do with all of these ideas that you're sharing here, going within awareness and exploration of who we truly are and what that actually means. Because fundamentally, when we look at the true self is innately a regenerative being. And I believe that there are just layers that suffocate that expression of the regenerative being, the true self, that we need to understand, explore, learn from, so that we can excavate them to create space for the true being to come to the surface. And so this is what created the foundation for the vision of the weave, which I would love to share with you right now. And that vision came through, it was a ceremonial process. Can everyone see my screen? Yes? All right. This was a ceremonial process, and this was, for me, a clear experience of channeling a vision. It was very clear to me that I was receiving a message and that I needed to structure that message in the form of a framework that I could then share with people. And it's interesting how it started, because it started with a number, and the number was 3. The number 3 came as a tool for me to understand how to design an editorial for a magazine about regeneration. And it started from this understanding that regeneration starts on the level of the individual. So here, when you look at this image that I designed as a result of the vision that I received, you see that we have 3 ecosystems initially. That's how the weave started, and then we have a 4th ecosystem that emerged later. In the middle, we have the ecosystem of the individual. And I would like to clarify that when we talk about the weave, we don't talk about categories or subcategories or sections or tracks. We talk about the weave in terms of ecosystems and climates. So the ecosystems are the larger categories, and the climates are the subcategories. And why that's the case? Because the weave is a living organism. So right in the middle, we have the ecosystem of the individual with 3 climates, and this is where the number 3 enters. We have heal, rewild, and thrive. And this came as a result of this exploration of what's necessary for us to excavate these layers that suffocate the true self. This understanding that the true self is the only one who can be a regenerative being. And that being can then ripple out in the form of entering the community, co-creating, and creating impact on the planet. So when we talk about heal, the first climate of the weave, we're talking about exploring our inner and outer landscapes. We're talking about exploring our different bodies, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and understanding what are these layers that are suffocating the true self. Often these layers have to do with intergenerational trauma, systemic conditioning, cultural bias, or what we learned from our family. It can be shame, it can be guilt, it can be fear of judgment, it can be so many different things. And I feel like the journey in exploring what these layers are is an individual journey that can be also supported on a collective level. So in this realm of healing, we start entering this space of awareness where we become aware of who we are. What is it that we need to do in order to further get in touch with our true self? And also understand how we can accept that process of the shadow work. We can call it so many different things, and take action accordingly. What follows is the climate of rewild. I believe that this healing process, this process of reclamation of the true self, has everything to do with rewilding, with going back to nature, our reconnection with nature. And here we can talk about reclamation of indigenous wisdom, or primordial wisdom, which is expressed through indigenous wisdom. This contact with nature that reminds us that we are nature, that we belong to nature, and not the opposite, that we are one. It's the realm of oneness with our physical, natural environment, and how we can tap back into what nature expresses through its way of being to regenerate the way we live in the world. And so, for example, if we look at the timelines that we have artificially created to support capitalistic systems, we're going to see that that's another layer that's suffocating our true self. And when we tap back into natural cycles of life, natural rhythms, we are regenerating our rhythms in symbiosis with nature. And then we have the climate called thrive, and this is the realm of the full human potential. But here we're invited to understand that we are multidimensional beings. And what does that mean? It means that our existence within the matrix of the 3rd dimension is very limited when it comes to what we actually are, right? We are multidimensional beings who are unlimited limitless. And this is also supporting our understanding of what abundance actually is, because we have this limited understanding of what abundance is. So this forms the ecosystem of the individual: heal, rewild, and thrive. And this is not designed in the sense of creating a linear journey. This is a multidimensional journey. The animal representing the ecosystem of the individual is the butterfly, because it expresses the transformation that we go through as human beings as we excavate these layers, right? And the natural element that characterizes the ecosystem of the individual is the water, because we are made of water. We are liquid beings. When we think about the butterfly inside the cocoon, it has to become liquid in order to become, well, the caterpillar liquidifies in order to become a butterfly. So this is a reminder of our liquidness and our potential to constantly reprogram ourselves and transform into who we actually are and tap into our fullest potential as human beings. Once we ignite this process, and it's not that the intention here is to talk about healing as a journey that has an end, because it's a lifelong journey. We're always healing. We're always engaged in our healing individually and collectively. But once we start this process and get to a point in which we can become more whole and remember that we are regenerative beings, then we are ready to enter the space, the ecosystem of the community, which is the second ecosystem surrounding here the ecosystem of the individual. The ecosystem of the community is our co-creative playground. It's our house of mirrors. So once we become very comfortable with placing the mirror in front of us, we can then enter the house of mirrors in a way that we are no longer creating conflict, or we are aware of that dynamic and understand that it is here to serve us, right? In the ecosystem of the community, we have 3 climates as well. It starts with dream, and then weave, and then celebrate. And this is inspired by the dragon dreaming framework. And I don't know if everyone is familiar with the dragon dreaming framework, but originally it's dream, plan, do, celebrate. And here we put together plan and do in the form of weave, for obvious reasons, I believe. But this is the realm of co-creation. This is where we share our visions for the future. Dream is that space in which we dream together, we share our visions. After we go through this journey of human regeneration, or as we go through this journey of human regeneration, we enter the space of purpose. And in that space of purpose, we get in touch with our vision, the vision that we're here to channel. And then we enter the space of weave, where we can co-create together and see where our visions resonate with other visions. And then we celebrate, which is very important, I believe, in the regenerative culture, because in the capitalistic culture, we are driven by productivity. What's the next thing? And we truly forget to celebrate. So this is a very important aspect of this journey. And in a certain way, it is a linear journey, starting from dream, weave, and celebrate, where we can, when we arrive in the space of celebrate, we can harvest that vision in the form of the completion of a project, not necessarily meaning that the project is over. So this is community, and the animal representing the community ecosystem is the bee. The bee represents our dream of eusociality, of collaboration, of co-creation, in a way that bees teach us very well how to do. And the natural element here is fire. It's the element of creation, right? When I think of regeneration, just going back to that idea of the individual, I understand that a forest starts with a seed, the same way that a fire starts with an ember. Now, fire can be a creative force, but it can also destroy, right? And so this is the place where we can use the energy of fire as a co-creative energy that will ignite these visions that we are fostering as we navigate the regenerative movement. And then we enter the space of the planet, the ecosystem of the planet. And here, the idea is to really see these ecosystems rippling out from the individual to the community to the planet. In the ecosystem of the planet, we also have 3 climates. We have regenerate, we have cultivate, and we have recreate. Here, we're talking specifically about our relationship with the soil from different perspectives, but it's this return to the soil as the source of life, and how as regenerative beings, we are supposed to understand that our relationship with the soil needs to be symbiotic and needs to be mutual. We're not only extracting from the soil, we are also nourishing the soil. It's this intimate relationship as we grow plants and vegetables and create our gardens. This very intimate relationship with plants and how they can relate to us in gathering information about who we are and nourish us accordingly. So in Regenerate, we talk more specifically about the restoration of natural ecosystems. In Cultivate, we talk about...
Sorry, Barbara. We can just see one slide and it doesn't seem to have moved on. So I'm wondering whether or not your screen has... Are you still on the same slide, 14 out of 19?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Can you make it full screen? Because then we can see the...
It is full screen right now.
Okay. Wait, we can see all the rest of your browser there, but that's all good. Never mind. Okay, thank you. Sorry to ruin your flow.
That's okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. Can everyone see the illustration? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, so I'm just going to use this slide for now. Yeah, so going back to Cultivate, this is in regards to this relationship in terms of nourishment with the soil. So in this climate, we talk about regenerative agriculture, synthropic agriculture, or agroforestry, permaculture, any kind of topic related to this relationship with the soil from the perspective of nourishment. And then we enter the climate of Recreate, where we talk about the soil as this foundation for our existence on the planet in the form of shelter. So regenerative architecture, development, what is the infrastructure of the new earth? And the animal that represents the ecosystem of the planet is the bird, because the bird is one of the first species to return to a land that has been regenerated. And it's also an expression of our freedom, not only the freedom of the planet, but our sovereignty as human beings. And the element here is the earth, right? And it's interesting, when I started designing this illustration, I had chosen one butterfly to express the individual, but the other animals, I did not realize how many there were until I counted them. And that further solidified the sacredness of the number 3 that came, that was given to me at the beginning, because the ratio between the number of animals in each ecosystem is 3. So 1 butterfly, 3 bees, and 9 birds. This was not on purpose. And I am stressing this because this vision was really a sacred experience, where I saw sacred geometry emerging and all of the symbology emerging, that I then realized, for example, we have the golden ratio, we have Taurus, and the whole illustration also reminds us a bit of a yoni, which is the source of creation, right? The portal into the world. So we could explore many different symbologies here. And then in the second edition of the Weave, we inaugurated the ecosystem of the cosmos. And this is the 4th ecosystem surrounding the planet. And it also has 3 climates. Mythos is the first one. Solar Punk is the second one. And Holonize is the 3rd one. Nico, who is not here right now, he is the founder and co-steward of Mythos and Solar Punk. Mythos, the myth operating system, is very much about the new mythologies that emerge as we rewrite our stories, from moving away from degenerative stories towards regenerative stories. So when we look at this ripple effect, starting on the level of the individual, expanding to the community, and then to the planet, the cosmos is this place where we see the culture that emerges as a result of this rippling effect take form, right? And so here the element is air, it's also the ether, and there's no animal in this space because of the nature of the space, but we would say that the reference point here is source or spirit. And Holonize, well, Solar Punk is about how we can combine new technologies in service of nature, right? This is something that I believe everyone here is familiar with, and it's a very visual space. So we want to explore here what that future that we are creating in the form of culture would look like. Yes, so very visual space. And then holonize, this is a verb that we created based on the word holon. And it's this idea of this fundamental realm that encapsulates the entire journey from human regeneration to planetary regeneration, inviting us to remember that at the same time that we are whole on our own, we are also part of a greater whole. And so it's this expression of our interconnectedness and this remembrance of what we really are, which is consciousness, which is one, which is all together. So this is the journey that the weave is inviting its readers to embark on. And even though it reads linearly, because obviously the tool that we're using is linear, it is a concentric journey. So the understanding here is that the regenerative movement is a concentric movement that starts on the level of the individual, rippling out to the community, the planet, forming culture in the new sphere in the form of the cosmos, these three elements that we're exploring here. I'm going to stop here and maybe open the space for questions, if that's okay.
That's very okay. Thank you, Barbara, for a beautiful explanation. Do we have any questions? Anybody like to ask Barbara?
Robert.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Jeremy, for your awesome presentation and sharing your story. And just as a reflection, what I like so much about what I've seen from the Weave editions is how they are so interactive. So it's not only that you can read articles and interesting stories, but it's also very dynamic. You can watch videos, you can listen to podcasts, and maybe, yeah, you can share a little bit more about it. It feels very complete to me.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, that's a very good point. Because of my background in education, I have an understanding, a very good understanding that we need to cater for different learning preferences. And it's not that each individual has specifically one learning preference, and we can experience different learning preferences throughout our lives. But I feel like one of the aspects of our mission is to create content that is accessible to as many people as possible, not only in the form of creating an open source magazine, but also in the way we present that content. So whoever wants to read will have the opportunity to read. Whoever wants to listen to the content will have the opportunity to listen to the content. So initially we started with recordings of the articles as well. And it's something that we did not do for this third edition for a number of reasons. It was a huge project, this third edition. And maybe I can mention here that the Weave is not really a magazine, it's a mag book. And not only because it's a robust magazine, our latest edition has 204 pages. And we started with, the idea was to start with 54 to 65 pages, but our first edition had 116, the second edition 144, and this latest special edition has 204 pages. So it's really a mag book, as we call it, but it's also a mag book because when designing the editorial of the Weave, we're not grabbing random articles to form the editorial. We really keep in mind this need of creating a thread that shows this progression from the individual through the three climates of each ecosystem, creating this journey that can be seen from this realm that is more abstract on the level of the individual and then taking form in the other ecosystems. And that's why each edition of the Weave has a specific focus. This latest edition was focused on regenerative economy, and we're planning an edition focused on the regenerative movement happening in Latin America. And so we're always guided by this journey and creating a thread so that we can read it as we would read a book. So yeah, videos, when we have lots of images and audio content, and now we're going to be launching our podcast soon so that we can also serve the movement by creating more space, because the magazine is a seasonal publication. Thank you for that, Robert.